This training covers Chapter 9, the Meal Pattern Overview, and is presented by the Oregon Department of Education Child Nutrition Programs, also known as ODE-CNP. In this training, we will go over what are reimbursable meals, the different meal patterns, the required meal components, and other additional requirements related to the meal pattern. By the end of this training, we hope that you will understand what is a reimbursable meal and learn the basics of the CACFP meal pattern. First, let's define reimbursable meals. Reimbursable meals are meals or snacks that meet all the requirements of CACFP and may be reimbursed at the current rate based on meal and program type. In order for a meal to be reimbursable, it needs to meet several factors, be a reimbursable meal type, be within the maximum number of meals, have all required ODE-CNP approvals, and meet the meal pattern. Meals and snacks that are reimbursable includes breakfast, AM snack, lunch, PM snack, supper, and evening snacks. All meals and snacks must be approved by ODE and served during the sponsor's operational hours. While sponsors may serve some or all of the meal and snack types, only a maximum of 2 meals and 1 snack, or 2 snacks and 1 meal may be claimed for reimbursement per child per day. For example, a childcare site that offers breakfast, AM snack, lunch, and PM snack can only claim the breakfast, lunch, and 1 of the snacks per child each day. There are different maximum number of meals and snacks that can be claimed for at-risk after-school sites and emergency shelters. Check out the videos in Chapter 16 for at-risk after-school requirements and Chapter 17 for emergency shelters. ODE-CNP approvals include approvals of the site where meals are served, the meal or snack type served, and the meal times for each meal type. Sponsors can only claim meals that have ODE-CNP approval and are within approved sites and times. All meals must also be served to an eligible participant. For more information on eligible participants, check out the Chapter 1 video on eligibility. Let's check in on your knowledge. To be reimbursable, a meal must meet which of the following? Does it have to A, meet meal pattern requirements, B, be at an approved site, C, be served within an approved meal time, or D, both A and B, or E, all of the above? The answer is E, all of the above. In addition to meeting meal pattern requirements, being served at an approved site, and being served within an approved meal time, you will also want to make sure that the meals claimed do not exceed the maximum of 2 meals and 1 snack, that the meal types claimed were approved, and that all participants were eligible to receive the meals. Within the CACFP, there are 3 main meal patterns, and all of them are set to meet the standards laid out in the Dietary Guidelines for Americans. The infant meal pattern, which covers infants 0 to 5 months and 6 to 11 months. The child meal pattern, which can be broken down into 1 to 2 years, 3 to 5 years, 6 to 12 years, and 13 to 18 years. And the adult meal pattern, which serves adults 60 years old and over. While the videos in Chapter 9 will cover the basic meal pattern information for all meal patterns, specific information related to the infant and adult meal patterns will be addressed in Chapters 11 and 21. The child meal pattern is considered the standard meal pattern since it covers the majority of the participants on CACFP. These 4 different age groups all have different required minimum portion sizes due to their nutritional needs, and their portion size requirements are listed in the CACFP Child Meal Pattern chart and is shown on the slide. A copy of this chart is available from the ODE CNP CACFP meal pattern page, which is linked in the description section below. In all meal patterns, there are the same required meal components. Meal components are the general food categories that together make up a reimbursable meal. There are 5 different meal components: fluid milk, grain, fruit, vegetable, and meat alternates. The components that are required will be dependent on the meal or snack type that is served. In addition, the food that is served must be creditable to count towards the meal component. We will discuss what creditable means a little later in this training. We want to first understand which meal components are required for each meal type. Breakfast consists of 3 components: a fluid milk, a grain, or a vegetable and/or fruit. Sponsors can choose to substitute a meat or meat alternate for the entire grain component up to 3 times a week. For lunch or supper, the meal pattern will consist of all 5 components. These are fluid milk, grain, fruit, vegetable, and meat alternate. And finally, for snack, sponsors must serve 2 different components out of the 5 components that are available. What does a day's worth of meals look like? It may look something like this, with pancakes, strawberries, and milk at breakfast, milk, blueberries, grilled cheese sandwich, and broccoli for lunch, and some crackers and mandarin oranges for snack. There are different required minimum portion sizes for each age group, and sponsor staff must be familiar with them for all age groups that they serve. Now that we know what meal components are required for each meal type, we need to also understand that only creditable foods can be counted towards the meal components. Creditable foods are defined as those that can be counted towards meeting the meal pattern requirements due to meeting the nutritional guidelines from the Dietary Guidelines of America. The specific requirements for each component will be covered in other videos in this chapter. There are also many resources out there that help to determine creditable foods, such as the USDA CACFP Crediting Handbook and USDA's Food Buying Guide. Links to both resources are available in the description section below. Non-creditable foods such as cakes, potato chips, or bacon must not be served as part of the reimbursable meal since they do not meet meal pattern. However, these items can be served as a bonus food. It's time for another knowledge check. How many times can a meat or meat alternate substitute for the grains component at breakfast? Is it up to once a week, up to 3 times a week, up to 3 times a month, or never? The answer is up to 3 times a week. Remember that it can only substitute for the grains component and not the fluid milk or fruit and vegetable component. In addition to the meal components, there are some additional requirements for the CACFP meal pattern. These include food safety and sanitation, water availability, food preparation and service, parent and guardian provided components, and meal accommodations. We will go over each of these requirements. Food safety and sanitation is vital to all food service, and CACFP is no different. Sponsors are required to adhere to proper sanitation and health standards for storing, preparing, and serving foods. All state and local laws and regulations related to health and sanitation must be met. Water must be offered to children throughout the day. All drinking water that is offered must meet federal and state requirements. For child care centers, this means meeting Oregon child care regulations for testing lead in drinking water. Sponsors are not allowed to deep fat fry foods on site due to safety and health reasons. It is also important that sponsors are not using CACFP meals and snacks to punish or reward participants. While it is best practice to encourage participants to eat all foods that are served, sponsor staff must never force a participant to eat. Sometimes parents or guardians want to provide food items to be served for the participant during meal times. Parents and guardians can provide up to one component of a reimbursable meal for their infant or child. The food item that is provided must be creditable to count towards the meal. If you have participants with a medical accommodation, then the parents can provide more than one component as long as the sponsor provides one component of the meal. It is important to note that parents and guardians must not be coerced into providing any components if they do not want to. This flexibility is only allowed as a convenience for the parent and guardian and is not meant for sponsors to offload their responsibility in providing a complete CACFP meal. If parents or guardians wish to provide more than one component, and this is not due to a medical accommodation, sponsors must not count that meal or snack for reimbursement. What happens when a family requests a meal accommodation for a participant? There are two types of meal accommodations. There are medical accommodations and meal preferences. Medical accommodations are accommodations that are medical or disability related, and sponsors are required to make reasonable accommodations for these types of requests. The medical accommodation must be documented with a medical statement or a doctor's note from a state-licensed healthcare professional or registered dietitian if it does not meet meal pattern. For medical accommodations only, the meals are reimbursable even if they do not meet meal pattern. The other type of meal accommodation is meal preferences. These include cultural, religious, lifestyle, or other requests. Sponsors can choose whether they want to accommodate or not, but they must be consistent and follow their written policy. You cannot pick and choose which meal preferences you will allow. These accommodations can be documented with a meal preference form. In these cases, only meals that meet meal pattern will be reimbursable. It's time for one last knowledge check. You find out that your substitute teacher is punishing children for not eating their vegetables at lunch by taking away their playtime. What do you do? In this situation, you will want to retrain the teacher and remind all your staff that punishment is not allowed with CACFP meals and snacks. As a best practice, you will also want to provide them with guidance on how to gently encourage children to try new foods instead. When you provide training, make sure to document the trainings provided. Anytime you find that your staff are not following CACFP rules, retraining is always a requirement. In this video, we have covered the requirements for a reimbursable meal, the different meal patterns for CACFP, the basics of the meal components, and highlighted additional requirements within CACFP. There are additional videos on the CACFP meal pattern available. Check out the links to the playlist in the description section below. ODE supports equity and excellence for every learner. This institution is an equal opportunity provider. Thank you for taking this training.